Today's episode is extremely special because for the first time ever, I'm actually going to interview and invite for a chat Courtney. Courtney has been working with me for a little while. We have known each other for maybe 2 or 3 months. Would that be right?
Yep, about that, yep.
I would love for you to introduce yourself to the world. How would you do that?
My name is Courtney Evors. I am a multi-passionate creative. I'm a consultant, aspiring career coach, launching into that soon, and a lifter of heavy things.
See, I know what all of those things mean. And I obviously also know quite a lot about you. And in a way, I just want to start from the beginning. You've done so many things in your life. And I'm impressed with each and every part of it. So can you list, maybe first list so people can understand all the things that you have actually done? And then maybe, go on.
Total of all the things, or in my adult life?
I want it to be quick. So if you want to do
Okay.
total, it needs to be a list.
Okay. So I started off my career as a fashion designer. So I've worked in fashion.
No, that's not where we start. I think we start way earlier. If I know your past, I think we're starting earlier than that.
I started my life off as a athlete, tumbling around doing gymnastics, played team sports my whole life. I was on TV. I was a kid time news host for a local Philadelphia news channel. Did that as a summer job. That was fun. Moved into college, studied fashion, went and worked in high-end fashion. I did an internship at like Michael Kors, then graduated, went to New York, worked in low-end fashion, catalog fashion, ended up at Fila, moved to Portland with Adidas. From Adidas, I moved from Portland to Germany, worked there for 11 years. That's where I got into powerlifting. I was also a CrossFitter, but that started in Portland. Now I'm going all over the place. I have a granola business. I had a granola business in Germany. Got recruited, moved to Ireland to work as a head of a creative company there. Led a design team there. Moved into equestrian, rugs and apparel. Moved to Budapest, where I am now a consultant and self-employed. And when I was in Germany, I was on the German national powerlifting team.
I mean, what an impressive lifetime that you have already lived. I think if we go back to a few things, so the things that are interesting to me, and everyone else listening will find different things interesting, but gymnastics, the athlete part, there seems to be some sort of thread throughout the whole thing, because when you're talking about the fashion side of things, it also seems to be within the sports or the athletics side. And then you also do the powerlifting. Did you mention that you did nutrition?
I didn't. I just remembered that I forgot that. So
Yeah.
I also had my own fitness class for 8
Mhm.
years that I taught, CXT, Courtney's Cross Training. And I also was a holistic life coach and a nutrition coach. So I coached people in their nutrition as a tandem to sports coaching. I was a CrossFit coach, so certified in CrossFit, gymnastics, weightlifting, strongman, kettlebell. Yeah.
What is powerlifting for people who don't know what that is?
So powerlifting, people get this mixed up with Olympic lifting.
Mm-hmm.
Olympic lifting is what you see in the Olympics, which is really dynamic. It's taking the bar overhead and the squats and things. So that's a power clean or clean and jerk and a snatch. Those are the Olympic disciplines. Powerlifting is the sport that you usually associate with big guys, lots of metal plates, lifting and squatting weights really slowly. So powerlifting, you have 3 lifts. You have the bench press, you have back squat, and you have deadlift. And those are the 3 disciplines. And you have 3 chances to get a best score. And then your total weight is your total score.
And you were on the team for Germany?
I was on the German national masters team.
How does You're a US citizen, right?
I am a US citizen.
How does a US citizen represent or
Good question.
yes.
Yeah, I got into powerlifting. I decided to sign up for a local competition in Bavaria where I lived. And I was aging into the masters group. And because I guess I'd lived in Germany for I think at that time it was already 9 years.
Okay.
And so I was technically a resident, permanent resident in Germany. And I was aging into the masters group, and I was the strongest person in the soon to be 40 group. And they're like, hey, if you're strong, would you like to be on the German national team? I was like, am I allowed? They're like, you live here? And I'm like, yes. They're like, okay. I was like, okay, so I guess I'm lifting for Germany now.
That's so cool. Out of your full life thus far, what would you say is a moment that stands out for you?
Oh, that's a big question.
Mm.
Being able to compete in the IPF was a pretty big moment. Like
Is that the German thing?
that's the German thing. So that's powerlifting. That
Mhm.
was International Powerlifting Federation. So that's the top level that you can actually compete in the sport. And I was able to go and represent not my country, but a country on that highest level within that sport discipline.
I mean, that is really impressive.
Yeah.
I feel like your whole career is a bit impressive.
Oh, thank
And
you.
some people listening to this might be like, but you've done so much. Can you really be good at it all? How do you respond to that?
Sure. I of course, I think it's all relative to what you consider being good or disciplined with something. Within fashion in my career, I did that for 25 years almost, right? Like started since high school. So I've worked my way up to being a design director and leading design teams at Adidas, leading Olympics. That could be another thing I did was the Rio Olympics and leading that. Um, but at the same time, I also got into sports and lifting things through working at Adidas. And so I got into CrossFit and I started lifting things and did that on the side. So over the years, after also about 10, 12 years, I was able to build strength in that discipline. So that it is possible. It's just, I think that the thing is people don't see the time you put into all the different things, and it's just layered over time.
Yeah. You and I know a fair bit about human design. For people who don't know what human design is, do you want to give them a bit of a snapshot? Or shall
Sure.
I?
You can maybe explain to it better than I can because you have, I think, more study. But I was first introduced to human design back in 2016, I want to say 2016, 2017. Lifelong lover astrology. So this was another way of looking at, okay, my chart and who I am. And essentially, human design is another way of looking at who you are through different disciplines. I think it's I Ching, astrology. Uh, there might
Kabbalah.
be some other Ramda,
Kabbalah.
Kabbalah. Um, and based off of the time, location, and date of birth, time being very specific,
Mhm.
you have your own design. So everybody can fall into different categories within human design, but within that, there's so many different nuances that make you unique and what makes you you,
Mhm.
essentially.
I like using human design in the coaching practice for the purpose of getting to know someone super fast. I think that I can see a chart, I can go through what I can see and relay that. And within 5 minutes, I can earn trust really fast. I do this on sales calls. I do this even obviously when I coach. And there are some clues in the chart that can be really revealing as to who they are and who they're not recognizing themselves to be. And with you, and there's nothing revealing in that sense because you're very aware of who you are. But with you, you are a manifesting generator. And for those of you who are aware of human design but don't know enough about it, manifesting generators are those people that I would normally not say to. I won't ask them to niche. I would do it as a strategy, but I wouldn't ask them to choose the one thing that they should do forever and ever and ever. And Courtney, if you want to explain why that is, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. So within being a multi multi-passionate and manifesting generator, one of the things is being a multi-passionate, and the fact that we like to get into different things. And in that discovery of different things, we're not really meant to do one thing for our whole life. And once I realized this, everything clicked for me. I'm like, oh, okay, this makes so much more sense, because my whole life I was programmed to go forward in a path that I had studied and do this thing forever, right? And once I discovered it in my design, I'm a manifesting generator. I'm like, oh, actually, I'm allowed to skip around. It makes sense for me to
Mhm.
want to pivot and want to move and to try the things, start the things, and then be like, okay, I'm done with this. What's the next thing?
Yeah.
So it actually makes a lot of sense. The more I dug into my design and my profile, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy.
So was that a moment for you actually? We never talked about this, that like a relief of I'm okay to be the way that I am.
Yeah,
Was there a yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I think with a lot of the interpretations that I've done of charts, and for me, it was also very similar. I'm a projector. And for me, it was very similar. I'm like, oh, that explains who I am. And it's okay. It's like the whole self acceptance of I'm 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 meant to be this way. I don't have to be like a generator or manifestor or anyone else. I get to be me. And I think that's quite a powerful thing for one thing like human design to help you realize or recognize or see yourself in that way. But what I like about manifesting generators, and I have two, I think I'm in a family of, we don't know the time of birth of my father, but it's either a generator or manifesting generator. But when I look at, I'm in a family of manifesting generators and one generator, and it's like the amount of energy and the output that happens in that family. It's so much. And my sister, everything she does is she's so good at it. She becomes excellent at it. And I wonder if I'm seeing a bit of a pattern between all the manifesting generators that I see that tend to be high achievers, and sometimes maybe that pivoting into overachieving because they desire so much to do different things, and then acting on that isn't really allowed. So therefore they must prove that they can because they're able to. So it goes towards the other extreme of like, oh, I'm going to show that. I don't know. You and I haven't discussed this before. Does that feel like it might resonate or relate?
Definitely, I think there's part of it in there that there is there's a sense or speed of which, that comes with, I think, at least for myself, speaking to myself, of doing things. Like I tend to have always skipped over like steps and
Yes.
okay, I get it. And like let's move on.
Hmm.
And I never realized that I work at like I always knew I worked at a faster pace, but I just figured that's just how I was wired and it was me. Maybe I was just impatient. Uh and until I started looking into the human design, it's like, okay, actually, no, you learn things really quickly and you can adapt really quickly and you can see how things are kind of move forward. And so I can already jump 3 steps ahead. And so I typically will do that, but not everybody functions that way. And I think there is a tendency to want to jump ahead or skip ahead and then try different things. And it's very easy to then kind of go into this world of dabbling and trying all the things because it's like, oh, I have permission now. I can try the
Hmm.
things. And it's learning, okay, there's one side is like embracing the fact that you can do all these things. But there's the other side of acknowledging that maybe you should pick a couple of things to focus on and maybe put the other things aside. And it's easier to then say, okay, does this really light me up? Yes or no? If it's, yeah, it's okay, then that's a no, and I'll just push that aside. But if it's like, this is something that really lights me up, then I can say, okay, then I can continue on to this path and focus on this thing. And that's kind of where that element of the manifesting multi-passionate generator side comes in.
Mm. And I think you mentioned a key point here. Does this light me up? So really using that sacral. I think when we mentioned what human design is, we missed out the fourth one, which is the chakras. The igniting that does whatever it is that you're doing ignite your sacral chakra, and checking in with your authority, whether that's emotional. For a manifesting generator, would be emotional or sacral. Now, if this is going over your head because we're talking too deep into human design, don't worry about it. Ultimately, if you're a manifesting generator, or if you're a multi-passion, doesn't matter if you're a manifesting generator or not, if you're multi-passionate, if you're resonating with this, then I think the learning still applies, that it's really useful to explore the passions that you have, but having that ability to focus and see what's really lighting you up is a good way to kind of vet what should be the next step that you're actually working on. How is it from your side, though, from being someone who is multi-passionate, multi-hyphenate, multi able to do all of these things? We're not in a world where people think that's an okay thing. People like myself will say niche because that's the majority strategy. Yes, when you come and work with me, you'll realize that I'm not strict on it. It's a strategy that is useful. But if it doesn't align with you, then of course that's not what we're going to do. We're going to find different ways. But the world does not respond like that. The world is saying be niche, choose a lane, stay in one job, do the one thing, be a specialist. That's how they're responding. How is it from your end to receive that?
It's definitely takes some navigating, and you have to really think about, okay, for me, it's like, okay, who am I? What makes me happy? And, you know, also learning to drown out the responses or like input that doesn't matter to me, or like, okay, this person has an opinion. It doesn't, they don't have an impact on my life, right?
Mm.
And especially when you think about jobs and careers, I think most people have multifaceted sides and hobbies and things. So like to be interested in different things isn't so unusual. I think to highlight it, like probably the way that I do, is a little bit more unusual. And also to highlight it also in like a place like LinkedIn, that confuses the crap out of people because they're just like, okay, so what are you? Are you a consultant? Do you have a granola business? Like, are you a what are you? And knowing where you are and who your audience is, essentially, that's where you kind of have to be mindful and tailor it. Like, so
Mm.
LinkedIn, I'm very much like, okay, I'm a consultant in fashion because people can understand what that is more. But I'm branching out on Instagram to be like, okay, I'm actually focused on creatives and coaching and shifting. And let's see how people can perceive me here. And it's somehow not as confusing because they're like, oh, well, that's just Courtney. Because people who know me know I do all the different things.
If you had to choose a lane, if you're like, okay, I didn't know what human design was, and you've got the pressures of the society, the culture, and you're just like, okay, fine, I'll do it. Could you?
I I don't know. I think I did for the longest time. And even before I even really realized and got into human design, there was always a part of me that always pivoted. So like
Mm.
I was interested in other things, and I knew, okay, this side of my life is coming to an end, and I need to shift into another thing. But I think responsibility, um, and history, like just the fact that you have like a background in something, or I have a background in something, that kind of always pulls you back to like that safe space, right? And that's
Hmm.
where it's easy to stay in the safe space, but sometimes you have to push yourself into something that's a little unknown to really get something more out of life, to experience part of life.
Yeah. But I also wonder, like, knowing that you're pivoting and you're wanting more, is that in itself tiring? Like, now maybe it's different, but before, when you're just like, oh, do you ever think like, oh, I just wish I could just like stick with it? I don't want to get distracted. Has those thoughts ever come up?
No, I think sometimes it's obviously easier, like if you can just do the one thing and maintain a job and it's safe, but I know myself and I would just be bored. I would just be like, okay, what's next? Like I would do it and then like, all right, what's next?
What's next for what purpose?
Just for the purpose of continually exploring,
Exploring what?
life, what's possible.
Mm.
I think that's just the thing. It's like, okay, do I want to, I'm 46 years old. Do I want to continue doing the same thing day in, day out until I retire? And then what? It's like, okay, like I have so many hours left of my working life. Like I want to make sure that every day I'm showing up and doing something that lights me up.
Mm.
Like I need to be doing something that lights me up.
I wonder how different it is for you versus me or someone else who's also multi-passionate but not a manifesting generator. I because I'm asking you all the questions as if I'm not a multi-passionate, but I believe that all of us have multiple interests. All of us are interested in many different things. What makes it so different as a manifesting generator? I know we can't speak to others, but we can speak from our position. Because I sometimes see these posts and they're like, I'm multi-passionate, I will not commit to one thing. I'm like, yeah, but I'm also multi-passionate, but I'm committing, you know? So what do you think the difference is?
I think the difference is like everybody, like I said, like everybody has different things that make them unique and interesting, right? Like
Mhm.
hopefully not everybody's going through life in like a silo of only one thing. So you have to have other interests to make life interesting. And I think where the multi-passionate aspect comes in is most people with the interest, it's a hobby, right? It's like this is a thing I do on the side, this is a thing I do after work, this is a thing I do on the weekends. Um, you can be an accountant by day and maybe you take an improv class by night, right? Like those are um that's that's okay. But in terms of the multi-passionate, it's like, okay, how do I then translate this into like a career? Like I want to do this thing, but I also want to
Mhm.
do this thing, and I also want to do this thing. And I believe I can do all those things. And it's finding that balance of how do I how do I not burn myself out? So I'm not trying to go 100% in all those things because you can't.
Mm.
And it's also, playing with the scale of energy of like, okay, do I split up my time? Do I split up my days? And obviously, when you have a 9 to 5 job, it makes it a little bit harder. If you're working as a consultant like me, it actually frees up all the opportunities and the possibilities because I now own my time. So if I want to be a writer one day, I'm writing. If I want to be uh, career coaching, I could focus on career coaching and how I pivot there. If I'm, helping a brand work on their fashion designs and positioning, I can do that on a different day or even split the days and split my head and I'm able to compartmentalize and then lift things. That could be any day.
Have you had to face imposter syndrome?
Yeah. Oh, I face imposter syndrome all the time. I don't know if anybody doesn't.
I actually know some people who don't, which has fascinated me. I think there are obviously people I know who face it, but it's like a fleeting moment. It's it's a moment in time for them to check in. And then I have obviously people around me who face it a lot. I just wondered when, from a multi passionate perspective and imposter syndrome, is there, I wondered maybe it'd be less.
It I think it depends. It depends on I think for me, like with the things that I did, like when I was working full time at Adidas, I was lifting on the German national team. Um, not with them as with on my own, but lifting for them.
Yeah.
And I had like a granola business. Uh, None of those things at one point, at any point, I was like, okay, I had imposter syndrome. No, like, and I was because I was like, okay, these are the things I want to get after. I'm doing these things, and I'm going to make granola and figure out how to do it in a country that is not my native language. Um, yeah, don't start a company in Germany if you can't speak German. Um, I think it's a yeah, I don't know, like, it depends, like, sometimes imposter syndrome comes and you're like, "Okay, can I do this thing?" And other times it's you're so sure of yourself that there's a stubbornness that comes with it, and you're like, Alright, I'm gonna do this thing." Now that
Which
I answered your question.
it's fine. I think it's a good response to where you're at. So it leads me to my next question. You said a stubbornness. what is it that drives you to do all that you do?
I I think I have there's always been an ingrained stubbornness in me. Like I said, I'm into astrology, so if you follow that as well. I'm a Capricorn sun, an Aries rising, and a Taurus moon.
Mm.
So I'm a goat, a ram, and a bull. Eh, so I am an innately stubborn person, and I think I've always just been really determined, like ever since I was a kid, that like if I have something in my mind, I'm just going to do it
Mm.
until I decide, okay, I don't want to do that thing anymore, and then I will stubbornly not do it as well.
So stubbornness is the attitude. It's not the drive, though. What is it that's causing the stubbornness,
I don't
or,
know.
or the drive to just push through? I get the astrological,
I I've
reference.
I think I don't. Maybe I've just always have this. There's always just been like a drive in me to like do things, and it's like, okay, I'm going to do it, and then put my mind to it. Like I wanted to go into fashion, and I remember because I think like at one point I wanted to be a pediatric surgeon. When I was very young, I was like, okay, I want to help kids, and I was fascinated by it. Operation shows, like the things I would watch on TV back, like they would have surgeries. I'm like, this is fascinating. Um, Normal childhood, but and then I decided I didn't want to be around hospitals, and like I was like, okay, this is maybe not where I want to be. And then I got into architecture, and I was like, this is interesting. I would like to build things, buildings, and then I realized there was a lot of math in architecture. And I was like, okay, math is not my subject. Maybe this is not the thing for me. But I always loved fashion, and I would sketch and draw, and I would see the design in a magazine. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm actually good at this. Like I would literally sketch something, and then a couple months later, something similar would show up. And I just was like, okay, maybe I have this ability to see the fashion future. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, I want to go into fashion design. And she's like, it's very competitive. It's really hard to break into. What happened to wanting to be an architect or a doctor? And I was like, I'm an athlete. I play sports. I'm not afraid of competition. I'm going to do fashion. And and then from that moment on, I was like, okay, fashion is my goal. Design director is my goal. Creative lead is my goal. And that was it. Like I made up my mind, and I went to school for it. I worked hard to get my foot in the door to get a job in it, and it pivoted along the way in there. But I was like, fashion is what I want to do. And then I became a design director. And then I was like, all right, now what? I hit my goal, and I was like, all right, well, this is just more stress if I work my way up.
Not just any design director, but a design director of a pretty big
Yeah.
company. Yes. So, Courtney, I obviously know where this is going, or where you're going, I should say. But I want to hear from you because we're in build mode right now, and exciting things are on the way.
Yes.
Do you
So
want to speak to it?
I can speak to it. I am focusing on building my coaching practice. So I'm pivoting from fashion into career coaching for the multi-passionate creatives under the lovely company name title Creative Kitchen. So really focusing on the creatives, almost basically targeting people like myself who want to try to do all the things, but maybe need a little help to structure
Mhm.
and figure out a way to do the things and to do it well. In addition to that, I want to start a podcast. So working on the framework as we speak for that, which is really good practice for me here. Um, which hopefully then can also maybe have a YouTube channel. Let's see. And I am also writing a book about friendship and community. So those are the things.
And when I found out that you were writing a book, what did I say? Do you remember?
I don't remember. And it was
That's
yesterday.
okay. I remember.
It's of course. It's of course you are.
Yeah, pretty much. Any other person who's working with me right now who's not a manifesting generator who tells me that they're writing a book, I'm very encouraging. I'm like, yes, absolutely, write a book. But right now we're building the foundation of your business. Let's maintain focus. But someone like Courtney, who is manifesting generator, multi-passionate, has been able to handle several things at the same time and has the track record to be able to do that. So being a high pressured full time role, lift. Were you lifting and doing the granola at the same time?
Yes.
So training obviously takes a lot of time. So training to powerlift and running the granola business and being full-time employed for a really big company. When Courtney then says to me, I'm writing a book, I'm like, of course you are. It doesn't surprise me. And well done. Let's go for it. Let's do it. But then my role is obviously to remind you to keep focus as well. And you have a great system in place. You already know how to managing time is not the reason I'm here for. So you already have like this great system in place. You're like, no, I've got this dedicated time for this. I do this. And maybe you want to speak to a little bit more about how you manage your time as a multi-passionate.
Yeah. So I do try to build a somewhat of a structure in my day. I also have a giant bear of a dog who takes up a good portion of my day just because he likes to sit on our walks. Um, but my day is really focused around, okay, making sure that I'm getting content created. So I'll map out a certain time of the day just to write and to get ideas down. Um, as well, working on either the website or working on positioning planning. So I do have a structure and a map of how I focus on my day, but it does flow because I don't have other, unless there's another responsibility that comes in that's like a priority client or something. I do have the ability to kind of flow depending on where my mood is, where my head's at, and what makes the most sense. So if I have the ideas and I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and write, then I'll sit down and write and I'll focus on writing. Um, if I'm feeling creative and I want to work on uh, coaching and content creation, then I'll focus on that. Um, yeah, and then with the podcast, it's the same thing. It's they're so adjacent to each other and they're overlapping that there's a ways that I can kind of focus on both at the same time
Mm.
and get everything done.
Something you said was quite interesting because actually, no, it's what you said that was interesting, all of it, because what you're doing is really operating within your design. You're responding to yourself. You're responding to whatever need you have. And as a manifesting generator, that is literally the way for you to be. Remind me, are you sacral or are you emotional?
Sacral.
Sacral. Yeah, I thought you were. Where I went back to human design. It's just such a natural for me to go back to human
It's
design.
okay.
I love your have you spoken about Creative Kitchen yet? Have you mentioned it? The name?
I believe I might have mentioned the name. Yes.
We're mentioning it now
Okay.
again. Creative Kitchen is your name. I want you to talk about the reason why you chose it because you have the consultancy
Yeah.
kitchen and then it's Creative Kitchen,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So everything is around kitchen, which obviously I know the red thread, but if you can speak to the red thread as well, because I love the brand is just so good.
So my granola business started out as Courtney's Kitchen. Um, so just as an even step back, so it was everything is it surrounded my kitchen. I found out more recently that my human design element or my environment is actually kitchens. So it makes sense that everything in my life is a kitchen. So I'm obsessed with kitchens. But when I created my consultancy, which is the consultancy kitchen, the main idea is around, the kitchen is where all the best ideas happen. It's where parties end. If you go to somebody's house, everybody gathers in the kitchen. So best conversations happen in the kitchen. And for me, the
Always.
best ideas are created in the kitchen, whether it's food or if I'm washing dishes and stroke of genius comes to me, it's usually in the kitchen. And so for me, the kitchen is really that more of like that incubation space or that creative space where anything is possible. Um, and I know the things that I work on are because I it's not necessarily food adjacent. And maybe I just love to eat and spend my time in the kitchen. But that's essentially, why I went with kitchen as a thread in terms of my consultancy. And the
Mm.
creative kitchen is really just honing in on like the fact that I myself am a creative. I love art. I love food. I love expression. I love, you know, acting or improv and music. So everything that lights me up is in that creative space. And for a while, because I had such a strong identity with being a designer, like I was a designer. I'm a designer. I'm a designer. But I moved away from design 8 years ago. Oh, yeah, a while ago. But I still, even though I don't necessarily say, okay, tell people I'm a designer anymore, I still am a creative. And so that's why the creative kitchen just seemed more natural, because it's just an offshoot of what I've already established, and it's keeping everything in that kitchen ecosystem.
Nice. So I am really happy that you came on to this podcast, because a lot of people feel that, and I wanted to talk about the multi-passion aspect of it in particular, because a lot of people feel like they aren't allowed to live out their desires, their passions. And you shed a light on the fact that, yes, you can. There are ways you can do this. And I love that you're actually going to be helping more people do exactly that. Where can people find you, Courtney?
They can find me at the Creative Kitchen, and that's kitchen without any vowels, KTCHN, on Instagram. Also, or that would be probably the easiest way. And then if you want to find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn. Or under the consultancykitchen.com is my website.
I'll put all of the links in the show notes below, or if it's on YouTube, wherever that space is. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap this wonderful session?
I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else from my side.
Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for chatting to me. I shall obviously see you next week. But for everyone else, I hope you connect with Courtney on the socials. And if you have any questions, I'm sure she'll answer them.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much for having me, Ivy.
That's it for today's episode of The Creative Flight. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I invite you to leave a review. It really helps more creators find the show. For more insights and behind the scenes content, you can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. You can also check out my resources on ivymalik.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Until then, keep creating, keep pushing those boundaries, and keep taking flight.